What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over really the prelude to Secret Invasion. Yes, the prelude, because it was a big thing for Marvel. They did a lot of build up before they actually dive into this big event. Now, if you're new to comic and you have no idea what Secret Invasion is, basically it was a Marvel event where you had this alien race known as the Skrulls begin the process of invading the Earth because they had the ability to shapeshift. And so what they did was they would replace different people across the world. People who are very high ranking in different places across the world. So of course, like in the government system, superhero teams, things like that. And so you had some people actually find out that basically the Skrulls have begun the process of invading the Earth. Now, the new Avengers, which is led by Luke Cage, they found out first because they found out that the Elektra that could have been around for days, weeks, or even months or years was a Skrull. And the question is now, how long has Elektra been replaced by a Skrull? And where is the real Elektra? And now, of course, the question is, are there other heroes around the world that have basically been replaced by a Skrull? That is why this event is so huge, because right now you have the new Avengers wondering who can they trust. Now, in our last video, the new Avengers and the Mighty Avengers, the other Avengers team, was basically working together to deal with a Venom-like situation where basically all of New York was taken over by symbiotes thanks to a virus that was made by Doctor Doom. And so, of course, once our heroes were actually able to deal with that virus, you had Iron Man tell his Avengers team that basically right now they're gonna go after Doctor Doom to lock him up for what he did. Now, with that being said, one last thing before we actually dive into this video. I want you guys to remember this takes place right after Civil War. That right there is very important. And the reason why, because in Civil War, you basically had a law made that basically said if you're going to be a hero, you have to work for the American government. If you don't, you are breaking the law and you will be arrested. And so, of course, Luke Cage team was on Steve Rogers' side in Civil War. And so, of course, they do not want to be part of that law. And so right now they're legally being heroes, while you have Iron Man's team where, of course, they do work for the American government. And of course, they're trying to arrest heroes who are breaking the law. On top of that, Tony Stark is the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. All those things right there are very important to understand what's happening right now in Secret Invasion. Now, to begin today's video, we actually do pick up with a character known as Jigsaw. Now, Jigsaw is one of those characters we have seen so many times in Marvel Comics. On top of that, he's basically the Punisher's main bad guy. Because when it comes to the Punisher, a guy who kills almost every single villain, he needs a rogue gallery that doesn't die. Because if he does kill off those characters, you basically run out of characters for the Punisher to fight. But either way, you do have the Punisher villain known as Jigsaw right now just doing some shady work in the area. Now, of course, that is the moment he is confronted by Tigra. Now, Tigra is one of those characters that Marvel tried so many times to get popular throughout the years of Marvel Comics, but unfortunately, she never got popular. And even now in Marvel Comics, she's still one of those characters that they still try to push out. And of course, fans just don't care. Now, with that being said, you have Tigra being able to actually stop Jigsaw. The problem is, though, right after she does stop Jigsaw, well, you do have some cops walk in. Now, usually the cops will let the Avengers work as long as the Avengers show their Avengers card. And with Tigra being a reserve member of the Avengers, she does have a card, but these cops are just not listening. And with the cops arguing with Tigra, of course, it gives Jigsaw enough time to basically pull some guns out, shoot up the place, which of course does catch Tigra off guard, and the police officers as well. They get injured. You have Tigra kind of stand back to make sure the cops are okay, but then you have Jigsaw being able to get away from Tigra. Now, of course, you do have some more cops basically follow Jigsaw to hope to capture him. Now, of course, Jigsaw does get away. Now, the reason why Jigsaw does get away is because, well, basically the dude hides out in a nearby dumpster. And so with Jigsaw doing that, of course, the cops couldn't find him. Now, I do want to mention this is Jigsaw, a character right now who's basically broken. Because before the Punisher and everything, Jigsaw was one of those characters who had it all. Like, he had all the money and everything he needed. But because the Punisher and other things in his life, Jigsaw has fallen on the wrong end of things. And so right now he's mentally broken and physically as well. But of course, that is the moment he finds a note in his pocket. And this note is basically an invitation to a meeting. And of course, you have Jigsaw wondering, what is this meeting all about? And so of course, you do have Jigsaw go to that meeting. And this is where we basically continue the storyline, or one of the two storylines in our last video. And the reason why I said basically we're picking up with one of the two storylines from the last video is because in the last video, we covered two books, The Mighty Avengers and The New Avengers. And of course, they're two different teams. But of course, in their books, you had different things going on. And so in the New Avengers team and their books right now, you basically have different characters trying to become the next Kingpin. Because by this point in Marvel Comics, Wilson Fisk is no longer the Kingpin. Because in Brian Michael Bendis' Daredevil run, the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, was removed from that role. And so with him no longer being the Kingpin, of course, that means you have other characters who want to become the next Kingpin of crime in New York. Now, in this book, it is the Hood. Now, the Hood is one of those characters who was popular in the early 2000s, but by the 2010s, he really fell off. But the Hood is basically a guy who found a hood, a magical hood that gives him magical abilities. And of course, he is using those abilities to kind of help him become the next Kingpin. And so the meeting that Jigsaw heard about was led by the Hood. It's the Hood calling in a lot of C-list, D-list characters, some B-list, but mostly C-list and D-list characters to this meeting, and it's basically him saying we should all work together. But of course, it's still him being in charge of the whole operation. It's just him saying if we work together, be smart with our moves, we could basically rule the entire city. Nobody could stop us, not even the mighty Avengers that are led by Iron Man. And so this is the Hood promising every single person in this room that he has a way to help them out. And he also has a way to win a war against the heroes and basically take over New York. Now, to kind of convince them that he can actually do all of this, he tells Jigsaw that he knows what Jigsaw wants, and he's going to give Jigsaw that item that he basically wants. And of course, the one thing Jigsaw wanted was revenge against Tigra, because Tigra did ruin his night. And so it's basically the Hood telling Jigsaw, I'm going to prove to everyone here that I am a capable leader, but on top of that, I'm going to give you guys everything you want, starting with Jigsaw, by going after Tigra. Now, for the Hood, honestly, this is not a big target, because Tigra was always one of those characters that Marvel tries so hard to get more popular, but of course, they never could. But again, is one of those characters that you can say she's not a high target. other characters like Black Widow, Steve Rogers, Iron Man, yeah, those are big targets. But Tigra is not. But of course, with the Hood being able to go after Tigra and actually attack her in her own home and force her to obey him, is still good enough to the eyes of the other characters that the Hood is trying to recruit. Because you have the Hood go to Tigra's apartment, abuse her, beats her down, and basically tells her if she does not stay away from his men and his operation, he will kill her mother. And of course, he knows where her mother lives. And this is enough for all those different characters, all those different villains to look at the Hood and say, oh my God, what he's doing is great. Maybe, just maybe, we should follow the Hood. He can lead us to the promised land. Now, you have to also remember one of the things we did talk about in our last video, which is basically that the Hood is also in control of Deathlock. And remember that Deathlock is one of those 90s characters that fans used to love, and Marvel's just using him now as a plot device. But basically, Deathlock is a half man, half machine dude. Hoorah. Either way, though, basically the Hood has reprogrammed Deathlock, and so now Deathlock must do whatever the Hood wants Deathlock to do. Now, Wolverine overheard about the Hood actually controlling Deathlock, and Wolverine thinks that Deathlock was going to be sent over to Avengers Tower as a way to surprise the Avengers and kill off Iron Man's team. And so you had Wolverine go back to his Avengers team to tell them they should go help Iron Man and his team before they are completely killed off by Deathlock. The problem is, though, when Luke Cage and his Avengers team actually arrive to help out the mighty Avengers, well, of course, they stepped right into that whole Venom event. And so they never did stop Deathlock. But here's the thing, though. The Hood never did send Deathlock after the mighty Avengers. Instead, what the Hood did was he sent out Deathlock to rob a very important bank that was holding a lot of money. So basically, while you have both the Avengers team dealing with the Venom event in our last video, Deathlock was sent to a bank to get the Hood and his crew a lot of money. And so this is the Hood continuing to show everyone that he can be a great leader. On top of that right there, you also have the Hood find out that the Avengers, the mighty Avengers, are right now not in America. Because remember, at the end of our last video, Iron Man found out that basically the Venom virus we saw in our last video was created by Dr. Doom. And so this is Iron Man saying we are going to go after Dr. Doom and basically stop him and arrest him for what he did to our country. Now, the next chapter is basically a book that's kind of reviewing everything we talked about earlier in our last video, where of course we had the Venom virus turn everybody in Manhattan to basically Venom-like characters. But of course, the reason why we're doing this review is really important because it's a conversation between Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. Because of course, she knowed that her husband and his team went over to help the mighty Avengers to deal with that Deathlock. And of course, when they arrived, they did not deal with the Deathlock. Instead, they basically dealt with a Venom virus, and some of Luke Cage team members were infected by that virus. And so Luke Cage had no choice but to work with the mighty Avengers to basically free everybody who was affected by the virus. Now, here's the big thing though, because the question was, okay, what happened after Iron Man gave everyone the cure to the virus? Why didn't the mighty Avengers basically arrest you guys? Because remember, the new Avengers were on Steve Rogers' side in Civil War. They believe that basically right now, heroes should not be forced to work for the American government. And so with that being said, they're technically outlaws. They should be arrested. But of course, the question was, why didn't the Mighty Avengers arrest them? Because the Mighty Avengers work for the American government. And of course, the reason why, because innocent people at that moment, they needed help. The entire city was just infected by a venom virus. And of course, everyone is injured, confused, or other things had happened in the meantime where, of course, there could have been deaths. And so that means instead of trying to arrest other heroes who are just trying to be heroes, why not let them help you help innocent people get on their feet? And so, of course, that is the reason why the Mighty Avengers did not arrest the new Avengers. And so, with that being said, after that, we all know Iron Man called up his team and they basically left to go deal with Doctor Doom. Now, this actually leads into Brian Michael Bendis kind of reminding us basically about the idea that nobody trusts each other. And what I mean by that is when it came to Luke Cage and his team, when they found out about the fake Elektra in our last video, Luke Cage lost his mind and began to wonder who he can trust. And at that point, it was no one, not even his own wife. And that's how big this event was back in the early 2000s, because you have to realize if you were out there being a superhero and you found out that basically Skrulls have been invading the earth by replacing people, you're now wondering if your wife is actually your wife or a Skrull. And that's Luke Cage right now. Even though he tells Jessica Jones that basically he does trust her, at first, he did not. He was kind of like, are you a Skrull? Like, are you actually my wife? Is our child my child or a Skrull as well? Like, homeboy did not believe anyone in the room. It wasn't until Doctor Strange used a spell to basically say, everyone in the room is not a Skrull. You're good to go, Luke Cage. Move on. But even then, though, that could still been wrong, because we saw earlier Wolverine said he had no idea when he was fighting against Elektra that she was a Skrull. And that's huge because Wolverine's senses are usually great enough to tell things apart. Now, of course, you also have Brian Michael Bendis remind us that in our last video, Spider-Woman took the dead body of the fake Elektra over to Iron Man. Now, when it came to the new Avengers, she was the only one who believed that was a good idea. The rest of the team said no, because Iron Man, who is the leader of the Mighty Avengers, but also S.H.I.E.L.D., and you had the new Avengers say, Iron Man is the reason why we had a civil war, the death of Steve Rogers, and also a lot of our friends right now locked away in prison, all because of Steve Rogers. And so it's basically them saying, it's all because of Tony Stark. I said Steve Rogers, my bad. But you basically have the new Avengers say it's all because of Tony Stark. And with that being said, it's them saying, what if Tony Stark is a Skrull? That would explain his behavior over the last couple months, years, or whatever in comics. But of course, it's also Spider-Woman saying he is the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., Homeland Security. We have to tell him just in case, because if not, more and more people could be replaced by Skrulls, and that could affect our chances of winning. Now, if he is a Skrull, he'll kill me. But if he's not a Skrull, he'll let me live, and he will help me figure out this Skrull problem, which of course we saw in our last video. Tony Stark is not a Skrull. That right now he's kind of freaking out because Skrulls are invading the earth. And that right there is very huge. And so you have Wolverine basically sneak into Avengers Tower. Now, when he does, of course, he does go over to the room that belongs to Spider-Woman. Because remember, Avengers Tower is basically owned by the Mighty Avengers. Well, really owned by Iron Man. But either way, you have Wolverine sneak into the shower of Spider-Woman to catch her off guard, to see if she basically is a traitor. Because, of course, she went over to the enemy side to warn them about a Skrull. But, of course, it's Wolverine kind of wondering two things. One, is Spider-Woman basically jumping sides? Is she on the side of Iron Man now for good, but for the wrong reasons? Or two, was Spider-Woman a Skrull and she basically took that dead body of that Skrull to Iron Man, who could also be a Skrull, to warn him that the new Avengers know about the Skrulls. Like, it's Wolverine on edge for a lot of different reasons. But of course, you have Spider-Woman tell Wolverine that basically she did tell Tony Stark he's not a Skrull because Homeboy's freaking out and trying to figure out how to handle this Skrull problem. Now, while you have Wolverine and Spider-Woman talking to one another, you have Black Widow walk into the shower as well, which I'm kind of like, why is she walking to the same shower that belongs to Spider-Woman, not, her own bathroom? But either way, when Black Widow walks in, she's very confused on why in the world Spider-Woman is talking to Wolverine. But either way, you have Wolverine just going ahead and jumping out the window to get away before there is a possibility that he could be captured. Now, when he does leave, you have Black Widow begin to wonder, is Spider-Woman actually part of the team, or is she a spy for the new Avengers? Now, we actually do pick up with the new Avengers right now kind of having a meeting in New Jersey. And the reason why, because of course, they found out about the bank that was attacked by the Hood, who was using the Deathlock earlier to basically rob that bank. And so you have the new Avengers kind of like, listen, we have to go figure out where in the world these guys went to, because they robbed a major bank and took a lot of money. And of course, you have Doctor Strange being able to use a spell to kind of lead them over to the location of where the Hood and his crew is actually at. Now, of course, when they arrive, Doctor Strange does use another spell to basically say, hey, there are a lot of guys in there. If we go in there, there is a possibility that we could be overrun and taken out because there's more of them than us. But of course, you have the new Avengers come up with a game plan. And that game plan is to use a third spell to kind of show an illusion of a bunch of fake Avengers members helping out the new Avengers as a way to kind of throw off the Hood and his crew. Because if the Hood only sees like 6 or 7 characters, he's not scared. But if he sees like an army of Avengers characters, then he'll be scared and basically not able to focus on task on hand. And so, of course, you have the new Avengers attack the Hood's base with the illusion of a bunch of fake Avengers being there at the moment. And so when we actually jump into the third chapter, it is basically the new Avengers being able to go toe to toe with all of these characters who on the Hood side. And the only reason why, because most of these characters are really caught off guard by the idea of the illusion of fake Avengers being in the room. Because even though these characters are kind of like C-list and B-list and maybe D-list characters, you still have some characters on that list who are still technically heavy hitters. It's just that fans truly did not care for those characters, and so they kind of fell down on the C-list, D-list listing. But with that being said, there's still some heavy hitters on the Hood side. But again, they're technically being caught off guard by the idea that Doctor Strange made an illusion that a bunch of Avengers are here right now, but in reality, it's just only like maybe 6 or 7 characters, and that is it really. Now, while you have the new Avengers fighting against the Hood's crew, that is the moment you have Doctor Strange realize something about the Hood and, of course, what the Hood is using. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to Doctor Strange, he knows that basically what the Hood is using, which is the hood he's wearing, is basically a magical item. But on top of that, Doctor Strange knows that the Hood does not have the capability to use that kind of level of magic. And so when watching him fight against Doctor Strange or other characters, you have Doctor Strange realize that basically the only reason why the Hood is this capable of using the Hood is because the Hood is actually using the Hood. I know that's confusing, but either way, the item is using the owner. Like basically, yes, the hood is able to do a lot of different things with the power of the hood, but of course, he's being used by the item, and it's Doctor Strange trying to warn him. But of course, you have the hood begin to turn into a demonic creature like he did in our last video, except Doctor Strange is kind of ready to defend himself and his teammates against this demonic creature. But getting back to the main fight between the Hood and the new Avengers, you do have most of the Hood crew being able to actually escape, while you do have some of the members of the Hood actually get arrested. Now, this is actually huge, and the reason why, because later on, we're going to see the Hood do something else that is basically going to have more and more people believing the idea that the Hood should basically be the new kingpin of New York. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. But with the new Avengers being able to capture most of the Wrecking Crew, on top of that, you do have the new Avengers basically show the Hood that this team is not to be messed with. You have the police arrive and take away the people that the new Avengers were actually able to stop. Now, after the new Avengers have basically stopped those characters that were working for the Hood, they do give those characters over to S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, remember, Tony Stark is still in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., which means that right now you're seeing Maria Hill, who was a character I want to say was created by Brian Michael Bendis. And matter of fact, I want to say she was created around this time in Marvel Comics. I could be wrong. If I am, just tell me in the comments below. But either way, you do have Maria Hill actually tell these prisoners that they're not going anywhere at all. Because with the new laws that the American government have built, it's basically playing with the idea of making sure there are no more huge incidents happening in their country like what happened at the very beginning of Civil War when 600 people had died. And so with that being said, they're going to be taken to a prison that can basically hold them forever. The problem is, though, as soon as Maria Hill leaves the facility that S.H.I.E.L.D. was using as a way to transport those prisoners, well, that place actually gets attacked. And of course, it's being attacked by the Hood. And this is why I say the Hood is going to have another reason why people are basically going to look at him and say, yes, he should be our kingpin. Because even after they got arrested, he came to their rescue to free them again. Because it's the Hood saying no man left behind. And that right there is a very huge statement to make. And of course, it's a good one for the Hood, who's trying to build an army of villains to take over New York. But you basically have the Hood being able to get all his guys out of that facility to continue on with their master plan. Now, the next chapter, and really the final chapter of this video, is basically an annual. And remember, annual used to be, back in the old days, a way to kind of test out new talent in the comic book world, like new writers, new artists. But now annuals are kind of used as a way to kind of expand the story or to build up to a certain story. Now, with that being said, we actually do pick up with Maria Hill right now, getting word that basically the facility that she had just left was basically attacked. And of course, she's kind of like, what do you mean it was attacked? I literally just left. What happened to all the different agents we had there? And of course, she's informed that they were all completely taken out and the prisoners had escaped. And so, of course, you have Maria Hill very upset about the idea of what happened. Now, of course, we actually do pick up with the Hood right now, meeting up with Tigra. Now, the reason why he's meeting up with Tigra is because he wants to know the location of where the new Avengers are basically hiding out at. Now, remember, earlier in this video, we saw Tigra basically being forced to help out the Hood. Like, she was being forced to help him out because, one, he attacked her in her own home and beat the living you-know-what out of her, but also he also has her mother nearby where he can basically kill her mother as a way to say, if you disobey me, I will kill your mother. And so, of course, she has no choice but to basically help the Hood when he asks for help. Now, with that being said, he does ask her, where is the new Avengers base? Because the mighty Avengers should know where the new Avengers are basically hiding out at. But of course, you have Tigra tell the Hood that they're hiding out in Doctor Strange's home. Now, you would think with that information, the mighty Avengers would basically just go there and attack the new Avengers, because Doctor Strange's house is not really hidden. It's a well-known place in the Marvel universe. The thing is, though, thanks to a magical spell, it looks abandoned. And so, of course, basically no one knows that the new Avengers are actually hiding out in there because it looks abandoned. And so you have Tigra tell the Hood, yes, if you go there, you will find the new Avengers. Just get through the magical barrier and you will find them. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with the new Avengers basically arriving back to their base. And of course, their base is the home of Doctor Strange. Now, they just came back after fighting against the villains. And this is why I say I kind of feel like the timing is off, because the Hood was able to go free his captives, free his homeboys out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base and go back to their base, then go attack Tigra to get information about where the new Avengers are hiding out at, while the new Avengers are just now arriving back home. Like, I feel like the new Avengers should have been back a long time ago. But either way, you do have the new Avengers coming back home after fighting against the Hood and his crew. When they do get back home, that is the moment we see that something is actually wrong with Doctor Strange. And the question is, though, what? Now, outside the home of Doctor Strange, we do see the Hood and his entire crew right now outside watching the place, because they're trying to make sure that the information that they got from Tigra is actually true, that the new Avengers are hiding out in this place. Now, with that being said, though, you do have the Hood use a magical spell to kind of look inside. And of course, he can tell that what Tigra told them is the truth, that the new Avengers are hiding out in the home of Doctor Strange. But of course, the place looks abandoned, but in reality, it is not abandoned. Now, here is another thing. The place is protected by a magical barrier, but honestly, it's not a huge problem for the Hood. But here's the thing, though. Spider-Man was about to leave and go home, but as he was leaving, his spider sense goes off and it tells him, hey, the Hood and his entire crew are here. And so you have Spider-Man go right back inside to basically warn the new Avengers that they are about to be attacked. And so basically, this actually does lead into a big battle between the new Avengers and the Hood and his crew. Now, this battle, it does go on a lot of pages in the annual, but of course, it's actually pretty cool. Now, I like the artwork in this book rather than it was earlier in the series, because honestly, the artwork looked kind of weird to me. But either way, though, you basically do have the new Avengers fighting against the Hood and his crew. Now, while fighting against one another, you do have the Hood teleport inside to find Doctor Strange, because the Hood wants to get rid of Doctor Strange for a lot of reasons. But the main reason is because it's the Hood kind of knowing that with the Hood using a magical item, that basically Doctor Strange could technically do something about that magical item. And so it's the Hood wanting to remove Doctor Strange from the idea of him actually being able to do that. Now, with that being said, while you have everybody fighting against one another, the Hood was actually able to shoot and hit Doctor Strange. Now, that is where you basically had the Hood messed up at. And what I mean is that when the Hood actually shot Doctor Strange was actually battling something. And what he was battling was trying to control some kind of demonic spirit or demonic energy that he basically tried to use earlier as a way to kind of help him deal with different things that the new Avengers were basically dealing with. And so what I mean is that when the Hood shot Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange did quote unquote die or almost died, Doctor Strange lost control of that demonic energy and it just comes out full strength. And when it does, it takes everybody out. I mean, new Avengers, the Hood, and his entire crew are all taken out. Just like that. Bam, 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 bam. You're kind of like, oh my God, Doctor Strange, what spell did you use? What is wrong with you? Now, you do have Doctor Strange being able to actually kind of control the energy once again. But of course, it's kind of like, dude, what you just did was legitly crazy. That is wild. And so it's kind of like, okay, so what happens next now? Now, the Hood was able to get away once again, but with the Hood being able to get away, when he does get away, you do have Carol Danvers and some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents arrive. Because remember, Carol Danvers is part of the Mighty Avengers, the team that basically does work for the American government. And so, of course, with the Hood attacking the base of Doctor Strange, it basically did confirm for the Mighty Avengers that the new Avengers were hiding out in this place, because the Mighty Avengers never attacked the place because Doctor Strange made the place look like it was basically abandoned. But of course, when the Hood attacked the place, it was confirmed that it was not abandoned. The new Avengers were actually hiding out in this place. Now, you do not have Carol Danvers basically arrest the new Avengers. And the reason why, because she can tell Luke Cage is very worried about his wife and his daughter. Because when the Hood attacked the place, Jessica Jones and their kid was there. Now, Spider-Man was able to get Jessica Jones and the kid out of there before things got even worse. But of course, it's Carol Danvers saying, I am going to let it slide today, because basically right now you're dealing with a lot. You have a kid and a wife to worry about, but this is the only time I am basically going to give you a pass. And so you have Carol Danvers let Luke Cage actually leave. Now, we actually do pick up with the Hood, and right now you have the Hood right now kind of hiding out in some alleyway because one, he's exhausted, but two, he kind of needs to realize or figure out, what his next move is. Like, what can he do next? Now, this is the moment we kind of find out that basically he has been talking to somebody, but we have no idea who, because it seems like this voice is in his head and telling him what to do next. And of course, he's wondering, okay, if the next move is actually going to work. But to kind of end this video on a huge cliffhanger, we actually do pick up with Jessica Jones and the baby of her and Luke Cage. And of course, Spider-Man was able to get her and the baby out of there when the Hood attacked the base of Doctor Strange, but she kept running. And this is Jessica Jones making a mother move. And when I say a mother move, what I mean is that basically she's making a move as a mother to protect her child. And so where she goes is to Avengers Tower to basically go ahead and register under the new America's government law. And of course, could possibly mean that she could join the Mighty Avengers, the enemies of the new Avengers. And so with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.